Good morning and welcome to episode 17 of the Geeky Pastimes podcast. I record this mostly, sometimes there's more than one of me. We record this at 9 a.m. on weekdays over at youtube.com/Geeky Pastimes. So if you're listening to this on one of your podcast services, you can check out the live recording if you'd like over on YouTube. Just come and subscribe, turn your notifications on, and you'll get told when we go live every single day. So, what we're going to be talking about today, we've got a handful of news stories talking about a new Apex Legends legend, a Call of Duty board game that's coming out, Division 2 apparently not getting either a sequel or a next-gen version anytime, and why that might be, and the success of Dead Island 2. And then the main topic that I want to talk about today, and we will try and stick to timings a little bit better than maybe I have in the past, is what makes Call of Duty good. So what I've been talking quite negatively about Call of Duty, I think, over the last few days, and about the community and about some of the updates and things like that. Today, I wanted to be a little bit more positive and just try and talk about what makes it so incredibly successful and what's helped it to endure where other series have maybe not endured so much. So if you're in the YouTube chat and you've got thoughts on any of these things, please do let me know in the comments, and as I get to them, I'll try and sort them out and discuss your thoughts as well as my own. So we'll start off with the first news story because it's probably the one that I know the least about personally. And that's that there's a new Apex legend coming. It's called Ballistic. Apparently he's a disgraced Thunderdome entrant. I don't know what that means. I mean, I know the Thunderdome, I think of Mad Max 3 and Tina Turner and stuff like that with that. But apparently he's a new legend coming on 9th of May. I wanted to bring this up, not because I know anything about this legend or anything like that. I don't. But just really to talk about Apex Legends and the fact that it is doing shockingly well. Like, for a game that was based on the Titanfall IP, which was a game that was incredibly good, like Titanfall is one of my favorite games of all time. Titanfall 2 is definitely up there. But it wasn't a commercial success. It didn't do very well in the wider thing. Then they made a Battle Royale game based on that at a time where people were like, we don't need more Battle Royale games. We don't need everything to be a Battle Royale game. They didn't do any marketing for it before it released. They just dropped it. They just brought the game out straight away. And it's EA. And you know, lots of people have their problems with EA. There's microtransactions, there's kind of loot boxes in it with those little spinny things. It's got so many things that if you thought about it like just in theory, just hypothetically, you might think, well, Apex doesn't stand a chance. Like Apex is dead on arrival. There's no way it's going to do this well. And now you can look at it and it is doing incredibly well still. You know, it's been out for a long time now. But if I look at the top games by current players on Steam charts, which I often look at this, I often have a quick look. You can see here the top game, Counter-Strike Global Offensive, makes sense, incredibly popular right now. Lots of people thinking if they play that, then they're more likely to get a key for Counter-Strike 2. I don't think that's how it works. I think they've already decided who's going to get them. But anyway, lots of people playing that. It's always been very successful anyway. Dota 2, absolute juggernaut, has been going incredibly well for a long, long while. You know, people who play MOBAs tend to be like super into them. PUBG, which does still surprise me that PUBG does so well, considering, you know, again, Battle Royale, but also incredibly janky Battle Royale. And I've gone back to I played PUBG like almost religiously for the first year it was out. And then other better games came along in my mind. But PUBG, I go back to it maybe every like 4 months or so. And every time I install it, I play one game and I'm like, oh, this is still incredibly janky. Like, this is still just, the movement doesn't feel good to me. The shooting, like, is like kind of interesting. The shooting takes obviously a little bit more skill than it does in a lot of other games. But I still don't find it amazingly satisfying. And you end up with very long, boring games, and then you suddenly get shot and killed out of nowhere. It's a difficult game to like, I think, but still a huge audience. Obviously, one thing that all of those three games have in common at the top three, and please do correct me if I'm wrong, well, definitely the top two, is that you can only play them on Steam. So they are only available on Steam. You can't play them on another platform. You can't play them on another like storefront type thing or anything like that. Then PUBG Battlegrounds, I think, is available on console, but I would argue maybe the main player base is on PC. I don't know what it's like nowadays, but in the past, PUBG on console always ran terribly. And I know it's also another thing about these three games is they're all free to play, so free to play games. But yeah, so PUBG, I would say the player base is probably predominantly on PC. And then you have Apex Legends, and Apex Legends is an interesting one. It's up there as the 4th most played game on Steam charts right now. And it's, first of all, not only available on Steam on PC, you can play it through the EA like app, the EA storefront type thing. I don't even know what they called it now. It was Origin, and then they changed it to EA something, I think. I don't know. Not EA Connect, that was Ubisoft Connect, wasn't it? I don't know. Now I think it's just called the EA app. But anyway, so it's available on 2 different places on PC, and I would probably argue that there's more people playing. I would expect there to be more people playing it on Xbox and on PlayStation alongside PC. You know, I would expect it to be, that's the first game out of that list where I reckon there's probably more people playing it on Xbox than there are on PC, let alone PlayStation, where it's probably doing even better. So for it to be 4th on the Steam charts just blows my mind a little bit. But still, I don't really play it. Like, for whatever reason, I'm just not massively into it. And I loved it. Again, a bit like PUBG. I played it loads the year it came out. I loved the Shadow Drop. I'm a big Titanfall fan, so I was like super excited about that. And I thought Apex was really good, and it had some really cool ideas in it. Particularly, you know, it being, as far as I can remember, the first battle royale where you could respawn your teammates, even though it's a bit of a process in it, you could still do it. Which meant when you died in the game, if you died at the drop, you didn't just have to wait half an hour for your teammates to finish their game before you could play again. Instead, you had a chance of getting back into it. That was very cool. I thought all of the abilities are very cool. I thought what I did with the weapons was kind of interesting, where none of the weapons were like super overpowered. Like, all of them had fairly significant drawbacks, and I thought that made them quite interesting. And unlike Call of Duty, there's not like 50 weapons, there's, you know, like 10 or something. I thought Apex did a lot of stuff right. The big thing that hurt it for me, and this is, you know, controversial take time number 1 of this podcast episode, that the skill gap's too high. I genuinely think with Apex, I had loads of fun in that first year when no one was very good at it, or not many people were very good at it. And then over time, the same thing happened to it that happened to all Battle Royale games. Or, I mean, all games to an extent, but I think Battle Royale, it's exacerbated because you've got like 100 players and only one player's going to win. I don't know how many players there are in Apex. There's a lot. But yeah, it's exacerbated where if the skill gap is high, what happens is the people who are really good at the game keep on playing the game and keep getting better at the game. And the people who aren't very good at the game get fed up and quit. You know, they just like don't enjoy themselves that much, so they stop playing because, like, what's the point of keeping on playing when you die? And that means that the player base in Apex have got better and better and better at the game. And because I took a long time not playing it, when I go back into it, I just find the game insanely hard now. Like, I find it really, really difficult. I also think because of the long time to kill, that makes the skill gap a lot higher, that like you don't get so much of a benefit from getting a lucky shot or from taking someone by surprise. Generally, when you fight someone in Apex, it's going to be a two-way fight. They're going to have a chance to fight back. So whereas in something like Warzone, you can just sometimes get lucky and kill someone before they even know you're there, in Apex, generally, if you start shooting a player who's much, much better than you, they're probably going to be able to turn it around and kill you. So I think that skill gap being so high kind of puts me off Apex. It's just kind of, I haven't been able to keep up with it. I haven't been able to keep up with the skill curve. So now I'm probably one of the less good players. And that means that I don't have so much fun. So I quit playing Apex, which makes the problem worse for everyone who is still playing Apex. Now, they do, I think, you know, a big part of why they're doing so well is something that we'll probably talk about a bit later. But I think the reason Apex Legends is doing so well, in my mind at least, is a big part due to ranked. Like, them having ranked, they're the only really big Battle Royale game that I know of that has a really good ranking system. There are things like, you know, Naraka Blade Point and stuff that I think are really good. But this is, you know, first-person shooter, Western, Battle Royale that has a ranking system. And I still don't think it protects people as much as some people think it will. Like, I can go into it unranked and still come up against people who are way, way better than me. But it gives people a reason to keep on playing game after game. Like, it gives people a reason to keep on coming back. Right now, if you're playing Warzone and you're just like a normal player, you know, you're hopping on with your friends to play some Warzone, you'll play a couple of games, maybe you'll get a win, like that'd be really good. And then you're just like, what's the point? Like, I don't think that many people care about progressing through the battle pass as much anymore because, you know, the rewards are quite bad. And I don't think people care about getting XP or anything like that. And the majority of people probably don't care that much about their stats or even look at their stats because they weren't there for ages. So they probably don't even know it's there. I think like a lot of people just play the game because, you know, they play a couple of games and it's fun. And then when it's not fun anymore, you know, they have a bad game or they win a game, then it's like, well, what's the point of carrying on? I know definitely with my friends, like if I'm playing with Namego and Arrow, like I'm playing with my in real life friends, then I find that often we'll win a game of Warzone and then just stop playing. Because it's like, well, it's not going to get better than that. It's just going to go downhill from here. Might as well stop playing. Because there's just nothing to keep you coming back. Whereas Apex having ranked, obviously, that could be a reason maybe why it's doing so well. I don't know. But I mean, just to back up, I don't know when did Apex Legends ranked come out? Apex Legends ranked. When did that start? When did Apex Legends? I don't even know how to Google this. When? Oh my god, it's only chucking it down outside. When did Apex Legends get ranked? It ranked in season 2. When did rank start in season 2? I don't know when that is. Oh, the 2nd of July 2019? Is that it? I'm not sure. God, has that game been going on for that long? That seems absolutely crazy. Ranked mode. Ranked mode starts in season 2. Yeah, so 2019, July 2nd, 2019. And then if you look at the oh, that's why I was about to say on Steam charts, like I can't go back that far. But that's because it didn't come out on Steam until a little while afterwards, didn't it? So that's why I can't look at the stats. Did it not come out on Steam until like 2021, 2020, November 2020. Oh. But yeah, I imagine it probably got quite a significant boost from ranked mode being good. Was my point, and that took a very long time to say it. Anyway, but yeah, so I'll be interested to hear, is the new Apex Legend like actually fun? I'd also be interested to hear from anyone who does play a lot of Apex Legends. Is it worth going back to, do you think? Like, do you think the game has changed significantly in the last year or so? I'd be super interested here. Just a couple of points from people in chat. Affas was saying that PUBG Mobile's massive in China. I imagine, yeah, like Asian countries. I think, yeah, PUBG, it's a Korean developer, isn't it, PUBG, I think? But yeah, I know it's much, much bigger in Asia. I'd imagine the PC version probably is as well. And Affas also said, vaguely related to the skill gap, he'd been playing X-Defiant Beta quite a bit, and this whole no skill-based matchmaking thing is not a good idea. You don't find pub stomping rewarding. Yeah, like this is actually not something I put in the news, but this is something that's worth talking about. The X-Defiant Beta is ending today. So I think it's the last day today. I don't know what time it's going to end. But one of the things that they were going on about, like being amazing at the very beginning of, oh, it's 11 p.m. PT. Okay, so it's tonight. Yeah, it finishes tonight at like 7 o'clock UK time, I think, 6 or 7 o'clock UK time. One of the big things that they advertised before that, like, I don't think normal people probably cared about as much, but people on Twitter seem to care about a lot, was that Apex Legends, sorry, not Apex Legends, X-Defiant doesn't have skill-based matchmaking, apparently, in its normal mode. So, you know, in ranked mode it does, but in normal modes it doesn't. And I saw lots of people being like, finally, someone gets it. You know, finally a company's going to do it. And like the first night we played X-Defiant, and like I was on with Flynn and Jaff and one of Jaff's friends, and you know, Jaff's obviously insanely good at the game. But we were playing it, and we didn't lose the game. To the point where, you know, even there was one map where there was only 4 of us and 6 people on the other team, and we still won. And a lot of those games, the enemy team just didn't have the slightest chance. And this was us being a group of people that were pretty much completely new to the game. Like, I'd played the closed beta a little bit, but only for like an hour or so. We were just, every team we came up against, absolutely destroyed them. To the point where it kind of got boring. And, you know, we were starting to experiment with different weapons and stuff like that, just to sort of try and make it a bit spicier. But it got quite dull that we were just winning game after game after game. And that wasn't even like a full 6-stack. That was 4 of us in a 6-player game. So we always had 2 randoms, or we had nobody in those. But we were still just absolutely destroying everyone. Then when I've gone on solo, nearly every game I've played on X-Defiant so far, not all of them, but nearly everyone, I'd say like maybe 80% of the games I've played have been an absolute whitewash one way or the other. Like, one team has absolutely dominated, normally because they had 1 or 2 players who were much better than everyone. Of course, it's quite fun when you are that player. If you're like doing really well and you're completely dominating the other team, and you turn the game around, that can be kind of fun. But for the other like 10 or 11 people in the game, it's not that exciting having like the entire game dictated by one person who's just insanely good and can kill everyone. It kind of, I think it's quite a good advert for why skill-based matchmaking is good. Like, compare it to Call of Duty multiplayer, that whatever issues you have with Call of Duty, I would say in multiplayer, the games are nearly always very close. Like, the games are nearly always pretty much like down to the wire where either team could win. I would say it's a little bit different in the matches where you have a smaller matchmaking pool, so like search and destroy, and obviously the ranked mode. Like, it feels like sometimes you can be misranked because they did that weird decision of making everyone start in bronze. So you get people who are really good who have just started ranked, absolutely destroying other people at the same level. But I don't know, I think it's been a pretty good experiment in, yeah, skill-based matchmaking is a super good thing, and we should have more of it rather than less. But, you know, I'm sure the argument will end up being, well, X-Defiant gives you the opportunity to have both. Like, you can have ranked mode with skill-based matchmaking, or you can play unranked without it. And that'll be fine. I just think it'll end up being like most other games that I used to play that had a ranked mode and a non-ranked mode, like Heroes of the Storm and StarCraft, where the normal unranked mode, not many people play it because it's horrific, because there's just a bunch of people in there who are insanely good, wanting to destroy people who aren't very good. You know, there's like massive, massive mismatches in the unranked mode because there's either people who don't know what they're doing who go in there, or people who are insanely good. And like the people in the middle, they all tend to go to ranked. So it makes the unranked mode like unbearable. Unranked StarCraft is bloody horrible. I absolutely hate it. But yeah, it's kind of interesting. Cool. So let's go off onto the next one. Not if, oh, sorry, Madjock said, not if one of your mates is a kill def of 1.5 and join him, then you get done in all the time. I mean, Madjock, look at who you're talking to. Like, my kill def in Warzone is probably like 1. I think by the end of Warzone 1, it was about 1.1. It sometimes has gone up to like 1.2 and sometimes has gone down to like 0.7. And I regularly play with a group, like the 4 of us who tend to play regularly. There's one person whose kill def is probably normally like 0.6. And then there's someone like Name Gear and Emil who their kill def is normally up nearer like 2, sometimes above 2. So we have a really big range of kill defs, and we still have lots of fun, and it's absolutely fine. And it's kind of, I don't feel like we ever completely destroy lobbies in Warzone, and I don't feel like we often get destroyed in it. Also, I play, like I was just saying, when I was playing X-Defiant, I play with Jaff, I play with Jack Frags, I play with a lot of people who are insanely good, and insanely better than me at the game. You know, I've played Warzone and bloody Benny Central and that a lot. And when the beta was on, I did play multiplayer with like Benny Central and Broken Machine and Jaff. And I still had fun, and the games were still close. Like, the matchmaking does a pretty good job of trying to average it out a little bit. So, like, yeah, if you're playing with friends who are much better than you, you're gonna be in slightly harder lobbies, and you've got to, you know, you kind of got to accept that. Because what's the alternative? The alternative is your really good friends getting lobbies with you, and then they completely dominate the game single-handedly and ruin the game for everyone else. I think it's always much better to sort of like bring people up rather than the other way of doing it, which yeah, ruins the game for everyone. So I think it's the best way they could possibly do it. Good morning, Renake. So the next topic, the next thing we're going to talk about, abandoning skill-based matchmaking entirely, is the Call of Duty board game. So this is something that was announced kind of quietly. I don't think the social media channels really talked about it too much. But there is a Call of Duty board game that has been announced. It is going to come out. Well, sort of. It's going to be kickstarted. Now, that might sound a little bit weird. You know, you've got one of the most successful games of all time. A company, a publisher that is insanely successful and rich with Activision, and then they're going on to Kickstarter to do a Call of Duty board game. That seems slightly strange, but I think it's pretty normal with board games. I think with board games, generally the number of people who buy it after it comes out is probably pretty low, like, you know, compared to a video game. And so the people who are interested in it are the sort of people who are on like board game websites, who follow board game accounts. They'll hear about the Kickstarter, and then if they want a copy of it, they will kickstart it. And so you're essentially prepaying for it. and then it will only get made if there's enough interest, because it's quite a risky thing to do. And then they know that they're definitely going to sell enough copies to cover costs. Like, that's kind of, I think, how this works with nearly any board game. Like, nearly any board game now is like kickstarted first, just because it means that like you're not risking much money. The number of people that try to make board games that they think are amazing, but then there's no real good channel to like advertise them, no one ever hears about it, there's not that many places that will even stock it necessarily. It means that, you know, you could easily lose a lot of money if you made like 5,000 copies of a board game and then sold like 10 of them, which could easily happen. You could lose a lot of money. So Kickstarter isn't as weird as it sounds. But yeah, there's going to be a Call of Duty game. They've said that get ready for the ultimate Call of Duty tabletop experience. We're excited to announce the upcoming release of Call of Duty the board game, a thrilling new strategy. Well, that's not playing sound, is it? Good. A thrilling new strategy game based on the popular video game franchise, with intense combat, tactical planning, and stunning artwork featuring miniatures of iconic soldiers and weapons from the series. The game is sure to satisfy any Call of Duty fan. That seems like a bit of a leap. Keep an eye out for the Kickstarter launch in late summer 2023 and be among the first to experience this epic board game. So when they're saying a strategy game, I'm thinking like people who are into board games, something like, you know, when you see the games like the X-Wing games or something like that, where you've got like miniatures and you've got rules about how they can move and stuff like that, how they interact, take it in turns. I assume it's that kind of thing. But it'll be interesting to see what it looks like. Like, I'm always interested in seeing these things. There's a lot of board games where I think the miniatures and the maps and stuff like that, the boards, look really cool. I can't say I'll necessarily get it because I'm not sure that I would have people that would want to play that. But it sounds like a kind of interesting thing. It's funny that it's existing. Right, the next one. Number 3. Division 2 is apparently not going to get a next-gen version. So this was some news that came out the other day. A few weeks ago, they'd said, someone had asked about Division 3, and Ubisoft had basically been like, yeah, we're not going to do Division 3 anytime soon. You know, I don't think Division 3 is even in production. It might be in like pre-production somewhere. I'm sure all sequels like that have some element of pre-production going on. But they've said they're not doing a Division 3 anytime soon, because they're still supporting Division 2. There is still new content coming out for it, new seasons coming out for it. It's been going for years at this point. I think it's got much, much better than it used to be in lots of ways. But yeah, now they've said, people have been asking, are you going to do like a PlayStation 5 kind of Xbox Series X version, so current gen, I guess, at this point? And they've said no. And they gave a kind of interesting reason for it. They said that they couldn't do it because then they would have features in the game for the new consoles that leave the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 behind. Which seems weird to me, because it's like loads of games have got next-gen versions that just, you know, make the graphics nicer and, you know, maybe have higher resolution textures, slightly longer draw distances, things like that. And they still coexist with the last-gen version. You know, Warzone being an example of a game that has like a PlayStation 5 Xbox Series X version, as well as a PlayStation 4 Xbox One version. But yeah, they've decided not to. I guess they didn't want it to be like, if they wanted to do it, they wanted to do something that was substantially different. It's worth saying there is already a patch, so if you're playing Division 2 on the current gen consoles, on the Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5, you can play at 60 frames a second, and like, I don't know if you can do 4K, but like, you can do higher resolutions. So it already does perform and look better on the current gen systems. But yeah, they're just saying we're not going to do a specific one for it. So that means that they can't use things like the PlayStation 5 haptic controls and stuff like that. Which, yeah, it was kind of interesting, kind of surprising. I would like to see more Division 2. I watched Jack Franks had a video yesterday about Division Heartland. That's something I didn't even realize, that they'd released a bunch of trailers and stuff like that for it. I'm quite excited about that. You know, I've heard little whisperings of it for quite a while now. The idea of it being an extraction shooter, so really just taking the idea of the Dark Zone from Division. You know, you go in, you fight AI, you get better loot, and obviously Division works quite well for loot because you're getting guns with better stats on and stuff like that, rather than DMZ where all the guns are basically the same. But you're going in and getting the loot, and then you need to try and extract them, and then you're going to be fighting AI as well as other players, and if you die, you lose everything from that run, but if you manage to get out, then you're sort of better geared up. And it looks like you've got a base that you can kind of upgrade and do stuff with. I'm not sure if you can actually upgrade it. I just assumed that. I saw there was a base. I don't know if you can upgrade it or not. Someone in comments can maybe correct me. But yeah, so I'm kind of interested in that. If there is a base you can upgrade, it sounds like it's a lot of what I wanted from DMZ. So I'm definitely super excited about Heartland. As soon as I get to play it and stream it, I will 100% be dropping in. I really like The Division. I really like The Division 2. I thought they were really, really good games. They looked really good. My only real problem with them was that the enemies get really bullet spongy. Like, that's the only thing I don't like about The Division. And I think it's a problem that a lot of games that have, like, statistics on weapons have this trouble of. You know, that, like, if you've got a weapon that does, like, 15 more damage or something like that, then, and that's in your game, like, that exists, then you kind of need some enemies that require that extra damage. You know, you kind of need some enemies that will take a normal amount of time to kill, even if you're using the most powerful weapons. And that means that when you're using not the most powerful weapons, so anything weaker, these enemies just seem to have huge amounts of health, and they have like health bars. So they'll have like a normal enemy will have 100 health, but then by the end of the game, they'll have 1,000 health. And it can mean that sometimes you're just like, you know, shooting an enemy in the head over and over and over again. That's not particularly fun. It's something that like Borderlands has the same problem with it. I think like some games like top-down RPGs like Diablo and stuff like that, it does not quite as jarring because you know you're just hacking away at them using spells and stuff. It doesn't matter. But when you're shooting someone, I think it always feels weird to shoot someone and then have a health bar over them. It's a bit of a problem with the Jedi games actually. Like, we've got Jedi Survivor coming out later this week. Is that, you know, you hack someone with a lightsaber and it's like you expect a lightsaber to just go through them because that's what happens in the films. And some of the games have done a really good job of being like, oh yeah, if the lightsaber touches someone, they die. But some enemies are really good at blocking your lightsaber, so they'll have their own lightsabers and block it. And that's always been like quite a good way of solving that problem in Star Wars. In first-person shooters and third-person shooters where you're using real-life guns, I don't think they've ever had like no one's come up with a really good method of allowing that to work. So like in Call of Duty, the way they do it is with armor. So it's like, you know, you keep shooting them and then they have a bunch of armor and eventually that breaks. And it feels kind of okay when you're shooting juggernauts and things like that. But it can be annoying when you're fighting normal soldiers and, you know, you headshot one with a 50 cal sniper rifle and it just like cracks their armor, like cracks their helmet, but then you need to shoot them again to kill them. There's sometimes like it feels like there's a little bit of a disconnect there. Like it doesn't feel as good as it should, but it's probably the best way of doing it. The Division just went for big old health bars, and like sometimes, you know, there's special health bars where you have to use a certain type of damage to like get rid of the health bar, like armor piercing rounds or something, and then you can use like incendiary rounds or something to do damage to their health. Stuff like that does make it a bit better, but I just don't think that ever feels good. I think like it would be really cool if they do a Division 3, if they do, you know, maybe do it in Heartland or something, if they just had it so enemies that you'll have to fight that have like, you know, need a lot more damage to take them down or something like that. They did have like big plates of armor that visibly come off as you shoot them. So then you're sort of exposing a weak spot. But then once you get that weak spot, it's just like one bullet and they're dead. I think that would probably be a bit more interesting to me. But anyway, yeah. So the news is essentially Division isn't going to have a next-gen version and isn't going to have Division 3 anytime soon. So it's going to trundle on as it has been, which I think is a little bit disappointing. But Heartland could be good, so we'll look forward to that. And then, oh, and sorry, just reading a couple of the comments about it. Fogger was just saying, my biggest problem with Ubisoft games is the third-person view. You play some of them, but it's annoying. Yeah, I get that. Like, I'm always, not always, but a lot of the time with shooting games, a bit put off by third-person view. I don't, like, absolutely hate it to the point where, like, I can't play games where you shoot and use third-person. But I feel like I would almost always prefer them to be in the first person. The Division, if it had a first-person mode, I think that would be pretty cool. Especially because, like, with melee games, you know, with Dark Souls and Elden Ring, it makes sense that you're third-person because you need to be able to see, like, your peripheral vision. You need to be able to see people on either side of you and just behind you. Whereas with a shooting game, you don't really need to see that because enemies probably aren't going to be that close to you. So if you don't have lots of melee, it seems a little bit strange, but I don't know, it's cool. Imagine if Assassin's Creed went first-person. You know, they did it with Mirror's Edge. Like, EA did it with Mirror's Edge. Like, imagine if Ubisoft went first person for Assassin's Creed. That'd be kind of cool. That could be, like, a nice way to reinvent the series at some point. Maybe they'll try one game like that. Even if they did, like a little sort of modified version of one of the old games, but it was like, hey, you can play Assassin's Creed 2, but in first person. That'd be sick. I'd like that. Anyway, and then the last piece of news for today is Dead Island 2 has sold over 1 million copies in the first 3 days. They're putting this out there, they're publishing this as like, hey, this is amazing, this is incredible. And I think it is amazing, you know, for a game that was in development hell for like 9 years, a game that, you know, I would say, argue a lot of people didn't think the first one was that good. You know, it was a fun game, but it wasn't like the best game. And a game that I think like the premise of it is a bit limited, you know, like, oh, it's a single player or co-op zombie bashing experience. We've had Dying Light 2 fairly recently that didn't do that well. That's in the same kind of genre, the same sort of wheelhouse. For that game to then come out and sell 1 million copies in the first 3 days, that sounds amazing. Like, that sounds incredible. I would say, like, my first instinct when I read the news was like, oh, wow, good for them. And then I suddenly thought, was that actually good? Like, is that a good, like, benchmark? I remember, like, when they were talking about Tomb Raider, when, who was that? Like, Square Enix? Was it publishing Tomb Raider? They said, so Tomb Raider, I'll just try and work out which one. Yeah, it was Square Enix sort of publishing it. I'm just trying to work out which Tomb Raider game it was. So Tomb Raider, I don't even know which one it was. One of the Tomb Raider games. I think maybe the first of that new trilogy. Square Enix came out and said that was disappointing because it only sold 3.4 million copies. And, you know, it ended up selling a lot more than that. It ended up doing very well, I think. I think it ended up on like 8 million or something like that. But it came out and sold 3.4 million copies. And apparently that was a disappointing game. And they also went out and said Hitman was 3.6 million copies. That was disappointing. Sleeping Dogs, that sold 1.75 million copies. That was disappointing. It's kind of interesting looking at these games and not really understanding the scale of what they're talking about. You know, if I did anything and I sold 1 million copies of something, you know, if I got 1 million memberships on YouTube or on Twitch, or I got 1 million views on a video even, that would be huge for me. Like, that would be a big deal for me. And, you know, I would make a substantial amount of money from it. But I'm just one person making stuff. I guess with Square Enix, you've probably got hundreds of people working on something like a Tomb Raider game. You know, and if that's hundreds of people on average earning, like, let's say £30,000 a year, now you're talking about millions of pounds just on staff. And then you've got all of the extra costs, you know, licensing, and, like, you know, the development studios and all the hardware they use, all the software they use, blah, blah, blah. The costs could go up incredibly quickly. So maybe like that, you know, them selling 3 million copies or whatever for Tomb Raider, 3.4 million copies, was disappointing and meant that they looked like they were going to lose money. Whereas for Dead Island, maybe selling 1 million copies in 3 days means it looks like they're going to make more money. I can't imagine, like, I don't know how it works financially, but if Dead Island 2 has been worked on for 9 years and it's got, say, let's be conservative and say 30 people worked on that game. I'm sure that's not true. I'm sure there's a lot more people. But, you know, 30 people paying their salaries for 9 years is quite a lot of money. And obviously, in reality, it was like 3 different games development studios. And when it gets passed, I imagine, like, does the publisher not care about the past costs, the sunk costs of it? I've got no idea how it works. Like, but however it works, I can't imagine Dead Island 2 is likely to make a profit. Like, that seems insane. Just because of how long it's been worked on and how many times they've rebooted development, stuff like that. It's like the whole thing with Skull and Bones, that Ubisoft game that's been worked on for like 10 years or something. And it's like, no matter how well Skull and Bones does, unless it's like, you know, Fortnite or Call of Duty or like that level of success, surely at this point, it's going to lose money. Like, surely at this point, they're going to release Skull and Bones and it's not going to return a profit. Because it's just been worked on for too long, and, you know, time is probably, I assume, the most expensive thing for a developer, for a publisher. Like, it's all well and good when gamers are like, oh, you should just delay it until it's ready. But if you imagine, like, you've got a studio of 50 people working on a game, those 50 people are not only using a studio that you have to pay for, like eating food that you probably have to pay for, getting through hardware that you have to pay for, all of that sort of stuff, but they're all getting a salary, a yearly salary. And while they're working on that game, you're making zero money. Like, you're not making any money out of that entire team while they're working on a game. And, you know, something like Skull and Bones especially, they've been advertising it pretty much non-stop for like 10 years. So, like, there's all of that marketing budget. All of that money is like constantly pouring into this hole. And the idea with a game is that when you get to the end of that, when the game comes out, then you make more money back than what you put into it. So while you were like hemorrhaging money into a project for years and years, eventually the game comes out and you make more money when it comes back. And obviously there's different models now, you know, so a lot of live service games, they'll release like early access versions. So they release them very early in development so they can start recouping costs while continuing development. But in general, it works with, you know, all of the work, all of the money gets spent, and then you get the return. But the longer that development lasts, the longer the development takes, the more the return has to be. And you know, there are some games you can point out, some freakish games that made an insane more money than anyone could have predicted. Fortnite being probably the best example. You know, it came out, saved the world. It wasn't very good. People didn't really like it. And then they did that hard pivot to Battle Royale and ended up being the biggest Battle Royale game. And it being this live service thing that's making insane amounts of money. It appeals to like this broad range of people from like little kids all the way up to adults all over the world. It can be played on like phones and everything. It's like that obviously turned out to be a very good investment, and it's good that they stuck with it. Skull and Bones isn't going to do that, is it? Like Skull and Bones is this like pirate ship sailing game. It seems like it's quite a niche thing in the first place. It's not going to be like, I don't know, but I could be wrong. I didn't think Fortnite was going to be the success it was, but surely it's not going to be as successful as maybe it would need to be to make any money back. So at some point, are they not just going to cut their losses and say, well, screw it, we'll just release it and get what money back we can? Because like for me, something like Skull and Bones, if they release it now as it is and it's bad, there will be a large number of people who will try it because it's Ubisoft and probably buy the first Battle Pass. I think it's a pretty common thing that when a new I think it's meant to be free to play, isn't it? I don't know. I'm assuming it's free to play. If it's not free to play, then I'm assuming there'll be quite a lot of people that will buy it because it's a new AAA Ubisoft game. If it's free to play, then a lot of people will download it and immediately buy the Battle Pass before they've even tried the game. I know I do that sometimes. I'll sometimes, if there's a game I think looks interesting, because the Battle Pass says like, oh, you get extra XP boosts, you get through the early part of the game quicker, I'll be like, fair enough, I'll pay the £10 Battle Pass to try it out. So they'll get that number of people, and then word of mouth and stuff like that will probably sink it, because it'll be a bad game. And that sinking was a very good pun, and you should appreciate it. And then, like, if they say take another year to develop it, is that going to be a different situation? Is like maybe the word of mouth will be slightly better, but realistically, it's going to be probably the same number of people who will play it in the first place. Maybe less, because some people will have forgotten about it. Some people who are excited about it now will move on and get less excited about it. And more the story becomes, oh, that's that game that, you know, they didn't release for ages that they kept delaying. Surely there comes a point where, you know, it must be hard for them to guess when it is, where delaying it, even though it would make a better game, isn't going to make you any more money. Like, all it's going to do is cost you an insane amount more money. So yeah, it seems utterly bizarre. Like, it seems utterly bizarre that they're still going with it. And same with Dead Island 2. Like, Dead Island 2, 1 million copies sounds good, but I don't know if it is. I don't know if that's enough. And like, is that game ever going to make money back? Is it ever going to get a sequel? Are we going to get a Dead Island 3? I don't know. For what it's worth, I think the game's really fun. I talked about this a little bit yesterday. I think it's a cool game. It's a fun game. But when they're celebrating over 1 million copies sold, to me, I'm immediately thinking like, oh no, that doesn't sound like that's enough. It's still more than I would have expected, but it also doesn't sound like it's enough where they're going to start turning a profit. But, you know, I've got no idea how much it costs to make, so no idea at all. Anyway, going over to the main topic for today's video. The main topic for today is what makes Call of Duty good. And this is, like I said, kind of a reaction to, I realized when I was looking back over some of my podcast titles, that a lot of them were kind of negative. A lot of them were like, you know, what's going wrong with Call of Duty? What does Call of Duty need to do to fix stuff? Like, why are Call of Duty gamers so entitled? Right, blah, 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 blah. Lots of negativity. And any of you who have watched me streaming for a long while will probably know that I'm not a massive fan of being negative about games. I'd much rather be hyped about games, much rather be excited, rather talk about games that we love rather than talk about games that we don't like. So I wanted to think about like, what was it that made Call of Duty so good? Like, what made it successful? Because, you know, I've brought this statistic up lots of times, and I don't even know if the numbers are still true, but it was true that over the last 15 years, the best-selling games in North America, because the MPDs are the only place where we get reliable information for this, was Call of Duty for 13 out of the 15 years. So if I look at best-selling games each year, I don't want best-selling PC games. The best-selling video games of the last 25 years. Oh, you have to sign in to get a to get a Fortune thing. That sucks. Okay, so we can do it from 1995 to 2019. There we go. So this is kind of interesting when we start getting to this. And I'll put it up on the screen so people who are watching the video version of this can talk. By the way, with the video version of the podcast, I was previously having the video version on YouTube and Spotify, because Spotify apparently do video versions. I don't know. I don't really know if anybody watches the video version on Spotify. So I think what I'm going to do from now on is just put an audio version on Spotify, which will then go out to all the other services. Because I can do that immediately after the podcast has been recorded. I can do that straight away. Whereas the video version, I kind of have to wait for a little while for various reasons. So yeah, if you are someone who watches the video version of it on Spotify, I apologize, but you have to switch over to YouTube. Let me know if anyone does that. But anyway, so yeah, top selling games every year. Let's have a look. So the first one is Mortal Kombat 3 in 1995. That was a good game. I remember playing that, which is a bit worrying because I was 9. But I remember getting that on PC and having a good time with it. Super Mario 64 makes sense. Like, it's hard to express what a massive deal Mario 64 was. Like, just, I remember playing it in this tiny little video game shop in Swansea. We were on holiday visiting my sister who lived in South Wales. And we went into this tiny little independent game shop. And someone had an imported Japanese N64, because it's back in the days when games came out a long time in advance in Japan. And they had an imported N64, and he let me play Mario 64, and it just blew my mind. Again, I was 10 when this came out, but it just blew my mind. Like, I'd never seen a game like that. It was like, people always talk about, like, oh, it's the first 3D game. It obviously wasn't. There was loads of 3D games before that. Like, 3D games did exist, but it was just, like, being able to, like, explore a little world in 3D just felt incredible. And it was so funny, and it was so, like, the animation all seemed so good. I just absolutely adored that game. Really good. Anyway, then Mario Kart 64 the next year, Ocarina of Time the next year. Like, what a good year to be a Nintendo fan. Donkey Kong 64, I love that game. Still think it's underappreciated. Pokemon Stadium, obviously riding high from the first generation of Pokemon and getting to see all your Pokemon in 3D, very cool. Then Madden NFL, back in the time where we thought that Madden was just going to dominate everything for a while. Vice City in 2002, Madden NFL again. Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. Now we're sort of getting into this thing where it's like, oh, okay, so it's like, well, if there's a Grand Theft Auto game, that's the best-selling game. If not, it's Madden. That was kind of the status quo for a little while. Also, something I think is kind of shocking is that Vice City came out in 2002. San Andreas, arguably, you know, at that point, one of the biggest 3D games that had ever come out, 2 years later. Like, how long have we been waiting for GTA 6? Like, what's the gap been between GTA 5 and GTA 6? Like, I mean, I know GTA 5 came out on a bloody 360. It came out, like, 2 generations ago. Absolutely insane that at one point, we went from Vice City, that was one of my favorite, I think that's still one of my favorite video games, like, one of my favorite Grand Theft Auto games, to San Andreas, which was huge. Like, that's utterly insane. Like, utterly crazy. That only took 2 years. But anyway, bizarre. Then Madden again. Then Madden again. Then Guitar Hero, which I love to see it though. I had no idea Guitar Hero 3 was the best-selling game that year, but that's awesome. Then Rock Band. What a time to be alive for me. This, 2007, 2008, that was just when I was finishing uni. I finished uni in 2007. So just finishing university, Guitar Hero comes out, happened to be living with a bunch of friends, lots of free time. 2008, Rock Band comes out, just a perfect time. That's when I was living with 50 Foot Snail when those games came out. And it was just awesome that I was in the perfect situation of living in quite a big house with a load of friends. Loads of people had loads of free time, so they'd be coming around, having some beers, having some drinks all the time. And Rock Band comes out, and we can all play it. Like, we bought it, so we had the drums and the guitars and microphone. Just incredible. Anyway, all of that. Then, 2009, so this is what, 14 years ago? Something like that? 14 years ago. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. 2010, Call of Duty Black Ops. 2011, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. 2012, Call of Duty Black Ops 2. Then Grand Theft Auto 5. 10 years ago, Grand Theft Auto 5 came out. We've been waiting 10 years for GTA 6. Insane. Then Call of Duty Advanced Warfare 2014. Call of Duty Black Ops 3 2015. Call of Duty Infinite Warfare 2016, Call of Duty World War II 2017, then Red Dead Redemption 2 breaks through in 2018, then 19 Call of Duty Modern Warfare, then I'm pretty sure, I'm like almost 100% sure, then it's Black Ops Cold War, then it's Vanguard, and then last year 2022 was Modern Warfare 2. So that's like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So yeah, 12 of the best-selling games in the last 14 years have been Call of Duty games. And that's insane. You know, it started with Modern Warfare 2. That was the first time it like really broke out into being like best thing. And you always hear people saying things like, you always hear people talking about, oh, well, the only reason like this Call of Duty did well, and you hear this every year, the only reason this Call of Duty did well is because people love Call of Duty, but because this one was bad, it won't happen next year. I've been hearing that since like Call of Duty, I would say probably Black Ops 3. I feel like Modern Warfare 3 there was quite a lot of negativity about when it came out. But, you know, I think Modern Warfare 3 was like the time where a lot of mainstream gaming journalists and critics started turning on Call of Duty a bit and being like, they're not really doing anything new. They're just releasing basically the same game every year. It's getting kind of tedious now. And, you know, I know lots of Call of Duty fans like, oh my God, Modern Warfare 3 was the best one. But, yeah, like that's when a lot of people kind of turned on it. And then since then, everyone has been saying like constantly like, oh yeah, well, like the next one won't sell as well. It's just, you know, people think people got tricked, but they won't be tricked again. And it like just keeps on happening again and again. Like it happened with Vanguard. People are like, oh, you know, like Vanguard is just because people like Black Ops Cold War or whatever. Like it's just because people like Call of Duty games because they liked Warzone, whatever. No, now it won't happen again. And Vanguard is best selling game. And then Modern Warfare 2, people are like, oh, well, it's just because people have good memories of the original Modern Warfare 2. Like, that's why it's doing well. And it's weird seeing people make those kind of arguments and then the game literally being not just selling well, but being the best selling game. Like, you know, it's not just like, oh, yeah, it's doing well despite its problems. It's like, no, these are the best selling games. They're beating games like Elden Ring, like God of War Ragnarok, like Marvel's Spider-Man. Like they're beating huge, colossal games every single year. And I don't think that's just a chance. I don't think there's some manipulation going on here. I don't think there's anything sneaky going on here. I think what's happening is that it's that the games are good. It's that the games are really, really solid. And thinking back to like what made the first Call of Duty good, like the first couple of Call of Duties, to me at least, the first Call of Duty was really good because it was a first-person shooter that was not as arcadey as, you know, all the stuff like Doom and Quake and Duke Nukem and Unreal and stuff like that had come out before. And it was also more cinematic. It wasn't like realistic. Like there was a few games around there, like I don't know if people remember games like Project IGI, and there was like a Delta Force game as well. There's a few games that had tried to do like the original Rainbow Six games that had tried to do more realistic takes on first-person shooters, and it wasn't that either. It was like, this isn't arcadey, it's not too gamified, and it's not realistic. It's more like cinematic. It's more going for that cinematic experience. And it did it really well, but it didn't do what Medal of Honor did, where Medal of Honor went for... I think Medal of Honor tried to play it safe. Like, Medal of Honor went for, like, the, okay, we're going to present World War II in the way it was presented in, you know, war films, in the way it was presented in, like, comic, you know, the pulpy comic books from the 40s and 50s, of it all being like about heroism and bravery and stuff like that. And in the first Call of Duty game, despite having some missions that are a bit like that, and you know, you're doing a bit of the campaign as like the British or the Americans or the Canadians or whoever it was going through like Western France, and that all being very much kind of like how you expect it. But then suddenly, act starts with you as a Russian soldier on a boat going across a river towards Stalingrad, and you don't have any gun at all. The commander is telling you, like, okay, just like, here's some ammo, here's a clip of ammo, go find a gun off one of the other people who's in front of you. Whatever you do, don't stop moving and don't turn back. And then you had to, like, run out and be scrambling around for a gun. If you did try and go backwards, your own soldiers, like your own commandant or whatever it was, would kill you, would shoot you. It was like, this was a game that, like, just blew my mind of like, this isn't what I expected. This isn't how like games normally present this kind of stuff. You know, and we'd seen like Saving Private Ryan and stuff. We'd seen the Normandy landings before, and Medal of Honor had kind of done that. And they'd done this thing of, you know, like, okay, it's super brutal and it's super difficult, but it's very heroic and, you know, it's doing it for a noble cause. And then here you are on the sort of like riverbanks trying to attack Stalingrad, and it doesn't feel heroic at all. It feels like a horrible scramble, and it feels like an absolute like butchery. And it's the like whenever you died, and you would die quite a lot in it because there were so many things that could kill you in one shot, it would come up with something about, you know, some little quote saying about how pointless war is and how terrible war is and how like your death doesn't matter. And it was like this weird sort of anti-war cinematic game that was subverting stuff. It was super interesting. And then it had multiplayer, and the multiplayer was really cool. Like the original Call of Duty multiplayer was a lot of fun, you know, mostly because you were using like kind of crappy World War II guns, but the maps were all things like, you know, that had like trenches in or bombed out buildings or like lots of woods, which was something that I hadn't really seen in many multiplayer games back then, multiplayer shooters. Like there was this really cool map that was like this snowy valley, and you had like woods on either side of it. It was quite small, but you had like woods on either side of it, and then kind of a dip down into a valley in the middle. And people found fairly quickly that you could actually climb up the trees. You could kind of walk carefully up some of the trees, then go prone with sniper rifles, and then try and pick off people on the other side who were spawning on the other side. So it turned into this awesome like sniper battle of you trying to pick out, like seeing people with their sniper rifles, trying to take them out. And then people realized, like, hey, if everyone's doing this with the sniper rifles, you can actually just load up with an SMG, and as long as you can get through the middle bit, as long as you can get through the no man's land in the middle, then you can run around behind them and kill everyone with the SMG and take out loads of people. So it kind of, you ended up with these kind of meta strategies and stuff. It was awesome. It was loads of fun. And then Call of Duty 2 came out with the launch of the Xbox 360, so it was like, hey, this is like a game that runs at 60 frames a second, lets you play online multiplayer, shooting other people, was loads of fun. It used the Africa campaign for the, you know, for the main story, which was something that hadn't really been explored in first-person shooter games that I'd seen before. So it's kind of interesting being like, hey, look, we're in North Africa. This is a bit different. So that was really cool, and I really enjoyed that. Call of Duty 3, which was Treyarch's first one, was a little bit weirder, where they started trying to add vehicles, and it just didn't really work. I think Battlefield had been doing quite well. Like Battlefield 2 had done quite well. So Call of Duty 3, they'd had a go at putting vehicles and stuff like that, and it just didn't work. It was just like a mess. The multiplayer was really messy. Like, I don't know, it wasn't fun. I can't even remember what the campaign was like in Call of Duty 3. It wasn't particularly memorable. So that was a bit of a misstep. But then obviously Call of Duty 4 came out, and Call of Duty 4 was a massive deal because it did like, it went back to doing interesting things with the campaign. So you had, you know, like the nuke going off, you had all giddied up. It like really doubled down on that idea of it being cinematic and maybe subverting some of the stuff you expect. You know, you expect the good guys to stop the bomb from going off. You expect the good guys to take out the bad guy with the sniper rifle at the end of the big sniper mission. Like, and it kept on like throwing little curveballs out and being like, hey, this isn't the game you think it is. And that was cool. And then multiplayer, you had things like kill streaks and progression, that made all of that like feel a bit more exciting. I think a lot of stuff was fundamentally flawed in that, you know, like the kill streaks had the problem that me and my friends talked about a lot of the time, that it meant whoever was already winning a game, whoever was already doing better, then got like an extra advantage to help them just make the game even more lopsided. So if someone early on managed to get an attack helicopter, you might as well give up. Like, they're just going to destroy it. And you started seeing like hackers on console, which was annoying. So there ended up being a lot of problems with stuff like that in it. And, you know, stuff was kind of unbalanced. Noob tubes, the grenade launcher was so ridiculously easy to use and powerful. And because you'd die so quick, you'd just keep on getting ammo for it. So just keep on doing it again and again. But yeah, but it was still like, it was fun. It was just, it had a lot of like rough edges and stuff. I don't think it's quite as good as some people seem to think. I think people sometimes have a bit of nostalgia towards it. And then like, as we went on through the Call of Duties, like they kept on doing stuff like adding more to the multiplayer, fleshing it out, having like all the perk systems. They added stuff like zombies with Black Ops, you know, still inventing new stuff, which I think they've done pretty consistently, like trying new things, trying new modes, new genres, really. Like the zombies thing was like completely came out of left field, and it's like there's not really been another game that's quite like zombies. No one's managed to emulate it properly. And things like Gunfight, the Spec Ops maps, the then going on to, you know, eventually doing stuff like ground war and infection modes and stuff like that. I know that was in other games, but they've constantly like kept on introducing new ideas, and that's even happening now. Like, as much as I complain sometimes that, oh, since Modern Warfare 2019 it's been kind of, the main games like the multiplayer and the single player especially have been quite samey and quite tedious, and I don't think they've been doing enough of that kind of subverting expectations that they did early on. You know, like Modern Warfare 2019 and Modern Warfare 2, it's so by the books compared to those original games. Like, those original games did really creative things, and they tried to take the narratives in kind of unexpected ways and take you by surprise, and have this like cinematic thing that wasn't something you'd seen before. Whereas Modern Warfare 2019 and 2022, really, to me, like, just kind of do exactly what you'd expect them to do. There's no real surprises in it at all. It's just kind of a tedious, like, hey, look at this cool thing. Or even worse, being like, hey, remember when you did this in that other game? That was cool, wasn't it? It's like, yeah, but I'd rather do something new. So I don't think the campaigns have got that much better, personally. I think they've got considerably worse. But the new stuff they've done, so like Modern Warfare 2019 bringing in Warzone, Black Ops Cold War having Outbreak, Vanguard didn't really do so much new, and I think that was a big problem. I think their multiplayer was pretty solid with the set of maps that they came out release, but, you know, they did Champions Hill, but they never supported it, which feels like a shame. But I suppose the attention was predominantly on Warzone for all of that. But then Modern Warfare 2022 having DMZ, like, and they, you know, they're still trying new stuff with, like, they're trying the raids, they're trying some different stuff with Spec Ops, and it's not all been successful. I don't think the raids and Spec Ops have been very good. But DMZ has been a lot of fun, and that's, you know, something that's completely new. And I think that's a big part of, like, when people know that when they get a new Call of Duty game, like when they play a new Call of Duty game, it's not just, hey, this is familiar, I can play it with my friends. Like, you know, it doesn't matter whether you're playing Advanced Warfare or Call of Duty, like Black Ops 2, or you're playing Vanguard, or you're playing like the newest game. It's still essentially the same. You know, like, there's differences, and people who are really into it exaggerate those differences and see those differences being much bigger than they are to other people. But essentially, anyone can play it. You know, if you've ever played a Call of Duty game before, you can hop into this year's Call of Duty game, and you can run around and you can shoot people, and you can play domination, or you can play hardpoint or whatever, or team deathmatch. And you basically, you get the gist of it straight away. And like, they managed to do quite a good job of transferring that to, like, if you play multiplayer Call of Duty before, you can kind of play Warzone, because a lot of the mechanics are quite similar. There's just obviously more to learn about, like, the broader game sense. And same with DMZ, you know, that's even a bit more complicated, but you can still kind of get the basic shooting right. So it's like become this very accessible game that lots of people have a bit of nostalgia for, but also everyone knows that whenever they bring out a new game, there's going to be something new. There's going to be something new to try. And I think that's what makes the game good. That's what makes the game exciting. And I've seen people, a lot of people saying, oh, well, I wish, like, you know, they'd go to only releasing a new Call of Duty game every 3 years so they could make them really good and really polished. And like, I'm not of that mind. I kind of don't agree with that. I kind of see it as, I like, a big part of what I like about Call of Duty is that there's always something new. There's always something fresh. They're always trying something different. There's always going to be a change. Like, I really hope whatever this Call of Duty that comes out this year is different in some way. You know, it does something new, it does something different. It's not just an extension of more of the same. And I think if we had the games, you know, one every 3 years, they might make some changes, but then you're only getting like new changes and like something new and exciting every 3 years. I don't want to keep playing the same game for 3 years. Like, I enjoyed Vanguard. I don't want to play Vanguard this year. I enjoyed Black Ops Cold War. I didn't want to play that when Vanguard was out. Like, I am much more happy moving on. The big problem with that, of course, is it actually going to be sustainable? Like, can they constantly keep inventing new things? They've been doing it for, like, you know, 15 years now. They've been doing a bloody good job of constantly coming up with new ideas and new ways to play, and kind of pushing, to be honest, pushing first-person shooters forwards in some kind of interesting ways. And I don't think they get enough credit for how many new things that they do, or they inspire, or they perfect and sort of polish. But I don't know if they can do it forever. You know, like, if someone asked me, okay, what should be the new thing for this year's Call of Duty? I'd be like, I don't know. That must be such a hard, risky thing to do, because it might just completely flop. It might be terrible. Like there's things that I think that like would be fun for me, but I've got no idea if like other people would like them or if it would even be like technically possible or work and stuff like that, which makes it kind of interesting in a way that they managed to keep on doing it. But yeah, so that's my thoughts. Anyway, I'll just very quickly read a couple of things from chat if anyone's got any thoughts on any of this. Hey, How Productions, thank you very much for becoming a sponsor. Appreciate that. But yeah, so anyone got any thoughts on what makes Call of Duty so good? Also, I saw Silent Hunter said, am I going to play the Diablo 4 Server Slam beta? Yes, I am. It annoyingly comes out the same day that the new Zelda does. So I'll probably be splitting my time. I think what I'll probably do is I probably won't play Zelda on stream because I'm buying the game anyway. Then I'm not getting a free copy or anything like that for it. So I'll probably play Zelda off stream, and then when I'm streaming, I'll play Diablo across that weekend, just because I bloody love Diablo. But yeah, it'll be interesting. Alpha said, I think it's time to bring back Medal of Honor IP with Vince Zampella. He and the original Infinity Ward team left the Medal of Honor team to make Call of Duty. Yeah, but then they left Call of Duty to go make Titanfall, which was some of the best games. Then they made Apex Legends, which obviously is doing incredibly well. And now Vince Zampella and his team are working on Battlefield. So it'll be exciting to see what the next Battlefield campaign is like, see like what he manages to do for that. I think that'll be absolutely awesome. Battlefield 5 feels heroic. It does feel quite heroic. Again, I'm just like, I think I spoke about this before. I'm a little bit wary of games that make war feel too heroic. Like, there's a place for it, but it's been kind of done. I'm all about the subversion. I'm all about sort of, you know, okay, so talking about what we would want Call of Duty to do that would be something a little bit different, something new and fresh. And maybe I'll leave you on this idea. Imagine if the next Call of Duty game is kind of a continuation of Modern Warfare 2 2022, which I know I said I didn't want, but it's actually like you're part of a new international team, maybe set up by the United Nations or Interpol or something like that, and your job is to bring Task Force 141 in, and they reframe all the stuff that Price and Gaz and Soap and Ghost and all of them have done in the terms of like, they've broken a lot of international laws, they've committed quite a lot of war crimes, we need to take them down. And it's like a Hitman type thing where each level is like a bigger kind of almost open world type thing where you need to find that person and bring them with justice. Not even kill them. You need to bring them in. I mean, maybe you could do it so you're killing them because it's Call of Duty and people want to shoot guns. But yeah, I think that'd be a really interesting thing of like actually show them up to be the villains that they very much clearly are. And have it as like more of a Hitman style campaign of like, okay, you're put in this situation, you know, maybe some of them are like war zones where one of them's fighting. Maybe some of them are like times where they're trying to do an assassination. So you're trying to race them to save the target and get them. Stuff like that. Like that could be kind of cool and have lots of different gameplay types. Maybe one of them could be like a vehicle type thing where you're chasing someone down, but have it so you're taking down Task Force 141. I know they wouldn't do it because they have this weird idea that Price and Ghost and that are good heroes, which I find very, very strange. Anyway, thank you very much everyone who's been watching. We pretty much kept time today, which is pretty amazing for me. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to like and subscribe. It does help me out a bunch. And tell your friends about it. It'd be great to have more and more people watching this. I'd love for this to be a sustainable thing that ended up making me money so I could just keep on doing it forever. If you want to support the channel, if you want to support me carrying on with these podcasts, please do consider becoming a member of the YouTube channel. It's only $1.99 a month at the cheapest level, or you can pay more if you want for some extra little perks. That will keep me doing this and let me know that this is something that is worthwhile to keep on pursuing. Also, I'll probably be streaming on Twitch later today. It's twitch.tv/Geeky Pastimes. I'll put the link in chat as well, just in case anyone wants to go over there. Give me a follow, ready for when I go live. I don't know what I'm going to stream today. It might be some more DMZ if Flint's about, or it might be some Dead Island 2, or it might be something completely different. I don't know. I'll see what games I've got available and what I need to do some streams of. So go check me out over on Twitch. Become a member here if you can. That would be absolutely awesome. And I will see you tomorrow morning for the next episode. Goodbye.